The following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.
We are back. San Francisco Giants baseball, past, present, and future. I'm Ralph Tyko with the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network, and the host of the show is Michael Duca, who is present and accounted for. Michael.
Good morning, sir. How are you?
I am better than I deserve to be. Overall, I can't tell you how happy I am that we get to talk today. I'm happy in general. We had hail in Alameda. Alameda, California, in the Bay Area. We had a 20-minute deluge yesterday morning that literally made it like a white Christmas. And I've never seen anything like that in California all my years here. I've seen hail a few times, but this totally covered the ground. And what a weird spring it's been all over the country.
Well, I grew up all over Northern California. I spent the longest time probably in Sacramento. But I went to kindergarten in Lafayette in the mid-'50s, and I remember building a snowman on the front lawn one day. So it has happened here before. Even snow has happened here before, but they are few and very far between those days.
I remember there was some snow I lived in Danville for a while. There was snow on that Black Hawk Mountain, and some actually came down to Danville. But wow, not in April, not in mid-April. I'm sure I'm starting to believe there may be something to climate change. Huh? Mr. Trump, Mr. President, this, not just California, the whole country is just had a weather thing.
I just listened to a show yesterday on NPR where a scientist, climate change scientist, professor from the University of Colorado was interviewed about a report that she wrote for the National Park Service. Took her 6 years to write it, and when it was turned in, which was the day before the election, it's been redacted to remove any reference to anthropogenic climate change, which means any reference to humans causing climate change, which has her more than upset. It has her concerned about her future as a scientist. And her prediction was that by the end of this century, the National Mall will be under a foot of water due to sea level rise.
Whoa.
We all know how D.C. handles an inch of snow. Imagine how they're going to handle a foot of water.
Yes, they'll get a reenactment of George Washington crossing the Delaware. They'll make an event out of it. They'll have Trump crossing the Delaware, but it better be a bigger canoe than Washington. It better be a barge.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to be the one to tell him, "Don't stand up, sir."
Yeah, please, sir. we beg of you, sir. Bring in your reward. We have a woman named Stormy something to see you, Mr. President, but you have to remain seated. All the scenarios are crazy. Let's talk a little baseball, sir, if we might.
That's what the Giants have been playing lately, a little baseball.
I know. Some good signs. Let's start with the positive. Pollyanna this morning.
All right. Well, it looks like Evan Longoria is finally beginning to get comfortable. It looks like he's starting to hit line drives, which is what you want from him. You don't want him trying to muscle up and hit the ball out of the park. You want him just spraying doubles all over the place. And the home runs will come if you do that.
And that makes everybody, Longoria coming around makes everybody in the lineup bitter. And they say hitting is contagious, but it's not just by accident that they came up with that. Everybody gets better pitches. And so we look for that as a positive. Hunter Strickland has been a positive, of course, as we talked about last week.
He absolutely has.
No question. McCutchen coming around a little bit. That walk-off granny was absolutely majestic. It was just a thing of beauty. It brought them together. I think I was hoping it would be something that we could look at when the worm turned. We could look back upon that when we look at this season. Didn't really turn out
what I know is that they went into San Diego and knocked off the Padres and scored a ton of runs in the first game of a 4-game series and wound up losing 3 out of 4, which looks a lot like a reprise of last year's results down there. The Padres literally looked moribund. They look like, their beat writers have already written off this season. They're already writing pieces talking about how the Padres are showing brief flashes of promise for the future, but that this isn't their year. And, then they take 3 out of 4 from the team that came into this series in second place in the league, or in the division. So, it's, in a way, it's kind of hearkening back to the bad old days of Andy Bennis and Gary Sheffield, Phil Nevin down in San Diego when the Giants simply could not solve that mystery to save their lives.
And isn't it interesting that Phil Nevin is a Giants coach? I don't understand.
Well, he was last year, not this year.
Pardon me?
He was their third base coach last year. This year it's Ron Wotus.
Oh, okay. Wotus went from bench coach. Henley Mullins becomes bench coach.
Right. It's the way the Giants are, I think, prepping Hensley to certainly get a managing job, maybe to get their managing job.
Wow, that would be in the age we live in of, not only multilingual, he's multilingual. He speaks everything, and he's a communicator.
He's a bright guy. He's a personable guy. He's a lot of fun to be around. Does not take himself very seriously, and has some interest outside of baseball. He wants to go to space.
Really?
Yeah.
That is very interesting. I have never heard of a baseball player wanting to go to space before.
Well, I've heard of a few who want to leave Earth in the 9th inning.
Yes, they do. Yes, they do. Okay, now give me some of what you think contributed to this recent, we say, bump in the road.
Well, how many teams do you know that can maintain at 500 if they're missing their top 3 guys in the rotation? I mean,
that's true. Guido's out as well.
You're doing it not just with smoke and mirrors. You're basically doing it with fog and mirrors, and you're hoping that nobody notices that the fog's evaporating. It's Tyler Beattie not ready for prime time, and I think they knew that, and I think that's probably not a surprise to anyone in the organization, with the possible exception of Tyler Beattie himself, who did take positives out of his short trip to the major leagues. He did say that, it was good to get his feet wet. It was good to pitch in those circumstances, to, see big stadiums and full stadiums and all that. And, if you use that to kind of take the edge and the newness off, so that the next time you come up, you're expecting to stick around, that's a whole different thing. Andrew Suarez looks like he may be able to contribute to the team this year if it's necessary. As I've told you before, the hitters in spring training, even before games began, were saying that Suarez had maybe the filthiest slider they'd seen since Randy Johnson. So, and there aren't that many guys old enough to remember seeing Randy Johnson's slider, so that's got to be a small sample size. But even still, how
does that make us feel in terms of age? If there are people that can't remember Randy Johnson, how many remember Bobby Shantz?
Yeah, well, I remember when Randy Johnson was in the minor leagues, and he had a clone, his brother from another mother, Sam August, at the same time in the Astros organization. And Johnson was with the Expos, I believe, initially.
And the A's have a clone of Randy Johnson who just was unfortunate or fortunate enough to have because some guys come back stronger than before from Tommy John surgery. Kid named Puck, who.
Yeah, we'll see how that goes. I mean, typically now, players do come back with stronger elbows from Tommy John surgery than they had before the injury, and that's because of how that surgery is done now. It was originally done where they took a tendon from the leg and used it to reattach a ligament into the elbow. But now what they're doing is they're taking the tendons and they're folding them lengthwise and then wrapping that around the tendon and screwing it down through all four thicknesses, which gives them, it gives the new attachment much greater strength than the old one had. And, I first remember, I can't recall who it was. There was a pitcher with the Giants. It might have been Kevin Rogers, but I'm not positive, who went out for Tommy John surgery and came back throwing 3 miles an hour faster than he did before the surgery as a result of the extra strength in that elbow.
Wow. What an age we live in.
Well, it's true, Ralph.
But folks, you say, well, I'm going to pick up 3 miles an hour, potentially this. We lose track of how these guys, what it takes to rehab for a year, the ups and downs and the pain and the loneliness and all those things that go with it. Everyone doesn't have the psychology, if you will, to get to be able to do that.
And not just that. Not just that, but the really disturbing trend that's going on now is prophylactic Tommy John surgery. Parents are having their 12 and 13-year-old kids operated on for this before they need it, before they're injured. In order to
I would take the kids away and tie the mother's tube.
Well, it's happening, and it's happening more than you'd like to think it is.
And take the doctor's license away. How about that? And get the kid a tennis racket if you can, or whatever. Whatever. Treat the kid like.
This is one of the things that happens when you worry about, when you place all your concerns in one basket. If you worry about nothing but steroids, then the system will develop around you. And I've always said that by the time science is smart enough to detect all performance-enhancing drugs, it won't matter anymore because everyone will be genetically modified.
That's true. And do they stand a chance in hell of detecting GMOs, HMOs, human growth hormones, whatever the initials are?
HGH.
without
your HMO may be able to find your HGH. I'm not sure.
You have to ask your primary physician. Call your primary physician. Dr. Balco will be with you in a moment. There's no blood test, from what I understand, in the current agreement with between baseball and the unions, is for whatever those initials are. Is that going to change? Does anybody care? Do they realize that it can be equally as effective to use those things as it was to use steroids? And is that true?
Well, I don't know that it's true that it can be equally effective as steroids. If that were true, I don't think very many people would still be getting caught using steroids. What is true is that HGH does appear to be the fountain of youth, if you will. It can improve your eyesight. It can improve your eye-hand coordination. It can't make you stronger. Only work can do that. And the reason that people lean towards steroids, in my understanding, is that it allows them to recover faster from heavy workouts, and that therefore they get bigger and stronger faster than they would without them.
Okay. And the effects of HGH, whatever, as opposed to that, are they similar?
They are not. They don't necessarily allow you to recover faster. What they do is they tend to reverse some of the effects of aging. So you may get a... No, people, HGH, that's a prescribed label reason for taking it, and there's any number of quote-unquote youth clinics all over Southern California and Florida. You'll see them even advertised in the airline magazines that are administering HGH, and I don't know that we can stave off our demise, Ralph, but we may be able to make getting there a little bit smoother. And that certainly seems to be kind of the way things are going in sports for guys who are using HGH. They're, let's put it this way. As long as there's a way to get better, people are going to try it. If it's legal, they're going to try it openly. And if it's not legal, then they'll try it surreptitiously. But you're not going to get people to stop trying to get better. You're not going to get people to stop gaming the system. Playing.
Are you cutting out?
I don't think so.
There?
Am I?
Oh, I thought
you
were for a second. Would you repeat the last sentence, please?
I said you cannot expect people who are playing a game for a living not to try to game the system itself. If there's a way to get better, they're going to get better. If it involves work, the good ones will work. If it involves chemical enhancement plus work, some people are going to try that too. I don't think you're ever going to get people not to do that, whether you go back to guys using slippery elm and throwing ephus balls and, sharpening their spikes or whatever, up to, the use of amphetamines around World War II and on beyond that, and now more sophisticated chemicals. It's been there. It's been part of sport for a very, very long time. The former Soviet bloc was experimenting with some fairly crude versions of steroids with well, it seemed like an experimental lab was mostly the East German teams, but, the East German swimmers and track and field.
I think their track team was caught.
Right, particularly shot putters, people like the shot putters, discus throwers, those people where, raw power and physical size, don't give you a problem. They actually wind up being a benefit for you. So, Yeah, it's been around forever, and it's going to be around forever into the future, and it's just always going to be a question of science playing leapfrog. You know, if the cops can catch up with the robbers, which usually by the time they catch the robbers are off doing something else entirely.
Right. The next thing, the robbers will find a way of phoning up the DNA tests. Some chemists will be able to do that. Probably not for a while, but it's the same thing. It's one chemist is fighting another chemist. And what with the outrageous salaries, you really cannot blame the players. You blame the system, and the system has turned a blind eye to it for a long time. And I'm now convinced it should not preclude people from being in the Hall of Fame. You can compare one generation to another. And if you want to talk Barry Bonds, there were enough relief pitchers using steroids in his time that they found a way of evening out the playing field. And the truth of the matter is, you really couldn't ever compare generation to generation because the balls were different, the complexion of the players were different. Everything changed from years on back. So I'm all for bringing Barry Bonds and Clemens and Palmeiro and anybody else who excelled into the Hall of Fame, and that's just a personal opinion.
Well, and I happened to, at least on an emotional level, I happen to kind of agree with you. I feel like if you let them play, then you need to let them in. You know, you can say that their numbers are tainted, but I don't remember anybody erasing them from the record books, and I don't remember anybody saying, oh, those games that you won with his home runs, they don't really count.
And here's your money back, Mr. Fan, because you went to a game that was tainted by GMOs or steroids, and we didn't know about it, and this was wrong. So we're going to give you a season ticket next year for free. You know, that.
Yeah, no, I don't see that happening, and I don't see the need for that because the reason that so many players did this was because the fans liked the results.
That's right, and the fans still like the results. Young fans, they don't give a damn that Henry Aaron was in essence not screwed, but he was, the idea of him not being home run champion on the idea of somebody phoning it up, quote unquote, that's what hurts. It's not the yearly records, it's the lifetime records that are skewed. Because the yearly records, you could just compare generation to generation. But the lifetime records, that does taint the record book.
Well, does it? I mean, Henry played in the time of greenies and crosstabs and pink juice and, what do we know?
Yes.
What do we actually know?
And what do we know else that was affected? I'm certainly not accusing him or Banks or any of those guys. What do we know?
And I think, we watched the games and we made assumptions while we were watching the games. We continue to watch the games and we continue to make assumptions. Maybe we're more cynical now, but I think the reality is the games that are played on the field produce outcomes, and we cannot decide after the fact that this outcome is valid and that outcome is not.
Well, I'm going to introduce another facet to the discussion of steroids, and that is kids taking anabolic steroids and dying. changing their personalities, committing suicide. There's a wonderful book written by a fellow podcaster on this network of ours named William Cashatis. And Bill wrote a book called Suicide Squeeze. It's about two players, one with a name that may evoke a giant memory. His name is Bob Garibaldi, and he's a nephew.
Oh, yeah, Santa Clara University.
Absolutely, a bonus baby and a future college ref, if I remember correctly, basketball ref.
That is correct. He worked a lot of West Coast Conference games, yes.
Yes, and another kid in this book was the late Taylor Hooton, who, the Hooton, a relative, and I'm not sure, of Bert Hooton as well. And these kids died as the result of teenage steroid abuse. And on some level, I know that you say, well, does this give permission to kids who just want to succeed? And anyway, so that can't be denied.
No, it's a thorny problem, and as you know, Ralph, I'm an employee of Major League Baseball, and I'm employed by the Commissioner's Office, so I have to be extremely cautious in what I say, and in particular, I have to be cautious about what I suggest as possible solutions. I will simply say that these drugs are all made by pharmaceutical companies, so they've all been tested, they've all been vetted, and they all have approved on-label uses as well as off-label uses. And I've always been an advocate of the notion that if you're going to utilize drugs in any kind of way, whether therapeutically or prophylactically, both of which are valid uses, that you do it under the strictest of possible supervision from a physician who is both familiar with the drug itself and familiar with how you are hoping to gain benefit from its use. And I'll just kind of leave it at that.
Okay, and I'll speak for myself. It's very difficult to find a physician who really gets the straight scoop from the pharmaceutical companies as well. So they're kind of, because these medicines are changing from day to day, they're at the mercy of what the pharmaceutical salesperson comes by and tells the doctor. So it's a conundrum in many ways, and it's something that it's societal. It's not just people taking steroids to play baseball either. If you go to any gym or any weight rooms or whatever, YMCA's, this, that, and the other thing. So what can I tell you? What's coming up this week for the Giants, my friend?
Well, let's take a look at the schedule and see. They are in for they're in for a rough 2 weeks. They've got 3 games in Arizona, followed by 3 games with the Angels, during which they will face Otani at least once, and probably only as a pitcher. Then they come home and face Washington, who might be the biggest negative surprise of the year. right
Who
now.
turned it around? The worm turned for them in the Met game last night.
Maybe.
So,
Maybe.
they're going to get some. Pardon me?
I say maybe. We'll find out.
Well, maybe I'm just negative because I've been a Met fan for 50 plus years. So, but it was a horrible way for them to lose. I want to ask you what has impressed you, not the Giants, what around baseball? Whom around baseball has impressed you in this very early going? Let's not forget that spring training had limited at-bats, not like in the old days. We're starting in April. The weather has affected so many of these games. But is there, besides the Japanese kid, I can't pronounce his name. I can't even pronounce Ralph anymore. But who really impresses you this year, or who stands out?
Well, the Angels impressed me this year, and it's because, first of all, they may have the best defensive team 1 through 9 that you'll ever see. And they added some very good hitters. They kept Justin Upton. Ohtani is clearly going to be a plus for them as a hitter. They've got Zach Cozart in that lineup now. I mean, that's a lineup that has no easy outs, that catches the ball, and their only question is going to be pitching. And so far, it looks like Ohtani has also given them a shot in the arm on that side. So they seem to me to be very real. The Red Sox, of course, are just off to an explosive start, and we'll see how long that can go on. But they've already started to open up some ground. They're 5 games ahead of the Yankees already. On the other side, your Mets are 5 games ahead of Washington. And, we all knew that Atlanta was coming. I don't know that we knew that they'd be playing 600 ball after 3 weeks of the season. Equally surprising, I mean, all of the division leaders to me are a little bit of a surprise. Boston, I didn't think I thought they would be certainly challenged to be a division leader, but their lead on the Yankees at this point seems surprising. The Twins.
How about Pittsburgh?
Pittsburgh and Arizona both. I mean, these are, if you take a look up and down baseball, you'll find that in 5 of the 6 divisions, the division leader has double-digit wins, and there's only a couple of other double-digit teams around them. I mean, look at the fact that the defending world champion Astros are 3.5 games back already.
And look at the Dodgers collapse.
Dodgers and Giants are tied 5 games out. They're both 6 and 9. And something will give there because in a couple of weeks they play each other yet again.
Right.
And the Cubs are a 500 ball club. I mean, there's just who would have thought that the Phillies would have a better record not only than the Nationals, but that they'd have a better record than the Brewers or the Cubs or the Cardinals or the Dodgers. I mean, only
because they're so high profile will I ask you this. What do you think of the Yankees situation?
There's an old saying that I was taught by Dusty Baker: water seeks its level. And sea level will always be sea level. They have too many good hitters on that team for this to go on forever. Sooner or later, Giancarlo Stanton is going to move from the funk that he's in into an equally hot situation in the other direction. And New Yorkers will forget all about it. When he hits 13 home runs in a month, they'll stand back in awe. Just one of the great hitters in the game. And, I think he, like so many other players, quote unquote wanted the challenge of the Big Apple, but did not realize what that really meant. Did not realize that that meant that you do not have the luxury of a slow start.
Right. He'll snap out of it, won't he?
Oh, he will. He will. And please remember, it's the second week, the start of the third week of April. I can't tell you how many times when I was a kid growing up, the Cleveland Indians were running away with the American League on May 1st and then won 45 more games the rest of the year.
That's a very good point. Hey, thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.
So valuable. You are so knowledgeable, and I learned so much. Thank you, Michael Duca. The show is Giants Baseball, past, present, and future. I'm Ralph Tyko. It's the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network, and we enjoy it. If you enjoy listening half as much as we enjoy doing it, then you had a good day this morning. So, Michael, next week, same time, same bad channel?
I'll be here.
I'll be
Lord
here.
willing, the creek will rise.
Right, absolutely. Or you don't get hit by a bus. Try not to do that.
Well, we don't have any buses in my neighborhood. So.
Well, we do here in Alameda, and I'm grateful for it. You can't take Lyft everywhere.
That is correct.
Be good, my friend. I'll talk next week. Thank you for
All
listening,
right,
everybody. Adios.